Welcome to What's Going On, the weekly podcast and videocast of First United Methodist Church in Yankton, South Dakota. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Going On. I'm Pastor Katie here at First United Methodist, and I'm glad you could join me for this episode. I think in record time since I've been here, this is going to be the annual conference recap episode with our delegates to annual conference. And so I'm going to actually be off screen, and I'm going to let the delegates share their experience of annual conference this year. All right, so why don't you, let's start by introducing yourself and maybe how many years roughly you've been a delegate to annual conference. Let's start left to right.
Well, my name's Dan Johnson. I'm the lay leader, and I was not a delegate this year. I had no voting rights or anything, but I was going to talk about the Green Team program that we've had here. But I did attend all the sessions, and this was the third one that I've been to.
I'm Craig Sherman. This go around, I think it's been, I'm not sure, 5 or 6 years. I was a delegate from like 96 to 2006.
Let's pause and then you can start that part over. Tiffany's really good at editing.
Oh, thank God for that. There.
All right. Craig, I'll just have you start over.
Okay.
You might put the water bottle down too.
I'm Craig Sherman. I've been a delegate. I was a delegate from 96 to 2006 for like 10 years, and then I was off for a few years, and then somebody couldn't go here a few years ago, so when Reverend Ron was still here, so then I've been going since then, before COVID, and then, so probably 6 or 7 years this go around, I think. Been to Bismarck 3 or 4 times, so yeah. It's,
My name is Robert Thuy, and as far as I'm the late delegate to annual conference, and I think I'm probably like Craig. I think I've gone every year practically since Reverend Ron came. So it's been 7, 8 years, maybe more.
Yeah, because I think you've gone pretty much all 4 years that I've been here.
I've tried not to go to Bismarck a few times, but it seems my name gets on the list all the time.
Especially to Bismarck.
Yeah.
And I'm Carla Hummel, and I'm the newbie of the bunch. I have not been to, this is my first annual conference, and so I laid heavily on the experience of the others that I drove there in treacherous winds and had to avoid a accident, so we had a detour, and but we made it there, and it was an excellent conference, so I'm glad that I had great guidance.
So it's grateful. I was so proud to have all of you at the table representing Yankton, and a special thanks to Carla for also serving as our photographer for the conference this year. We actually had pictures of us in conference, which was great. But I really want to start off with just sort of general impressions, and so especially from those of you who've been to many annual conferences and how this one felt compared to those. First, and with Carla, with this you being your first fresh experience of what this is, kind of having no preconceived notions, I'd like to hear how did this annual conference, how did you come away feeling from it? How did you think it went overall?
Well, I'll start. I would say that the previous annual conferences that I have attended were dealing with some difficult issues that the entire Methodist Church across the world was dealing with, which led to a number of churches disaffiliating from the United Methodists, and those other conferences were kind of difficult because of that. There was some contention. It was an orderly process and everything, but it was just difficult. But this time, it's like we have turned a new leaf. We've got that largely behind us, and the people in the churches and clergy and laity that remain are unified in moving on into the future now. We are decided that we are a welcoming type of church. All are welcome with us, and we can start to move on to other topics. And so in some ways, it didn't seem like there was that much difficult decisions to make as previous ones. This one sort of seemed like a walk in the park. So that was my impression.
Same for me. I mean, it was the last couple annual conferences that we've been to, and even the one online. There were a lot of tough issues and stuff. And this year, it seemed like we were all on the same page. We're ready to move forward. You know, and the bishop in her address on Thursday, talked about bridging the gap. I think what she called it, or
Mind the gap?
mind the gap, and talked about, and the thing she said is up to the laity and the clergy all across the Dakotas to become engaged in the work of closing the gap, minding the gap that separates the kingdom in heaven from what's happening here on earth. So I think we're ready to move forward and do what we can to make things better.
Well, I think there are a number of things that impressed me, but it really hit me hard, or I took it hard, I guess, when she talked about our connectiveness. And she talked about that first Thursday, she talked about how she had gone on a trip to Scotland during the COVID and got reconnected with her heritage. And it made me think about the heritage of this church and how we stay connected, and with my own family. And she had people from each district bring a jar of soil there to show that we had our roots and that we were there and that we were connected. We're all part of this Dakota soil.
Yeah.
And being a former history teacher and a boy who grew up on the farm, that really impressed me.
Yeah.
That we're all part of this soil, part of this land. Mm-hmm. We're part of this heritage of United Methodism. And I think we felt connected. We're all part of a family,
Yeah. That was a really powerful
It was powerful.
message, yeah.
I'm looking through some of my notes. We were talking about how we just jot things down that I guess we connect with, and until you have the next set of words that you connect with. And so some of the things that I wrote down was different people, different lives, different stories, courageous leadership, unity beyond uniformity, which I think I heard a lot of that in what you were talking about too. I had connections written down. Just people wanting to be seen, heard, and loved. And I think that comes back to our vision that we have done here, all the work we've done on our vision statement here. I felt very comfortable and confident that our vision statement was ringing true through the annual conference, and that we were right on track, and everybody was and that unity, that connections, we were all on the same page and wanting to move forward
And into the mission. I would agree. It felt very like we were getting back to what we were always meant to be doing. And so in that way, it felt very refreshing and inspiring and grounding as well. So I also just want to point out, Dan's wearing our church shirt today. Carla and I, and did you guys wear? We rocked our church shirts at annual conference. Did you get any comments on our shirts while you were there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had people stopping me and asking where we got them done, and so yeah. Back to, I think people are excited to move forward and have some visuals to do it with. So yeah.
So one of the differences this year, in past annual conferences, we've had sort of one keynote speaker that's done sessions. This year they changed it where we did TED TED Talk style speakers, in that we had a series of speakers who spoke for about 20 minutes. And so I'm curious, of those, which ones kind of resonated with you, which ones stuck with you, and what do you remember about those?
I don't recall the names of all the people,
So I was gonna
but
say, names are so hard.
but I tell you, several of them that really stood out for me included one woman who was involved in really a ministry having to do with human trafficking. And she's on the ground dealing with this in these rural areas of the Dakotas. And I was just shocked at how prevalent human trafficking is in the Dakotas, even in rural areas. And you kind of think it's just in big cities, or maybe at the Sturgis rally and stuff like that, but it's a significant problem that I think the take-home message was that there are people out there trying to help defeat this problem, but everybody needs to always be aware of what's going on around them, and if they see something with a person that doesn't seem right, that just something seems like it's setting off bells in your head that there's something wrong with this picture, like a person that's with younger people or women, or it can even be trafficking men or boys too, that if it seems wrong, you don't necessarily intervene right then, but you notify authorities that something doesn't seem right. And so that was a good message. So that was one of the most powerful talks I
One
experienced.
of the things I took from that talk was that, usually when you think about human trafficking, you think about, this is somebody that goes out and recruits kids that are lost or don't have parental direction or who run aways and that sort of thing. But she said that much of the time it's people that know these young people that are being trafficked, and oftentimes it's their own family members.
Right.
That
That's shocking.
And I started thinking about that, and I thought, I think maybe I might have seen something in the past. There were some signs there, but if you don't know that that's even a possibility, I mean, it's shocking to even think about it, but it does exist.
Yeah, and that sort of segues into one of the other speakers there that talked about addiction and his own personal addiction, primarily with alcohol, but just was really really good at explaining how addiction just totally takes over your life, and you end up doing things and making decisions that is totally controlled by that need to have that drug or that substance. And there's often, like when families end up trafficking their kids or things, there's almost always some drug addiction situation involved with that. So those are sobering topics to deal with, but part of the way to make it better is for everybody to be more aware of it.
Right.
Yeah, that was, those topics were very eye-opening, but what I found was the breakout sessions were, I think, on a much more positive note. And so it wasn't like you went and listened to all of these really heavy topics. There are some very hopeful topics, as well as, with the green team, as Dan had talked about. I went to one that was fresh expressions. I also went to one that was on like rural ministry, and the connections came through on that, of how to make those connections. How can we be there as support for each other, and how can we have programs for all of the different churches, no matter how rural you are, and making sure that the services get to where they need to, that everybody is taken care of, and that we're behind that. We're supporting each other in that. So, just to note that it's not all heavy.
Yeah, it's
Well, the thing I took away also from that, changed my mindset. when you're talking about rural, you know, and you think, well, you got these smaller churches with maybe 15 or 20 attendees and all that sort of thing. But they pointed out that, well, in South Dakota, we're all rural
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the nation.
Yep.
And we need to stay connected and not think, well, Yankton, we're a bigger church, you know. And then there are those little churches, you know, like Gayville or what is Scotland or whatever, Olivet or whatever, you know. And but that is not, we need to stay connected with each other and see what others are doing. And it surprised me in that rural thing, how much some of these little congregations, those three that joined together out in Gregory and whatever, they were talking about how they had worked together in programs and doing a lot of
They had a
fresh
confirmation
expression.
class
Yeah.
of 19.
But the number of fresh expression things they were
Wow.
doing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it just amazed me what they were doing to be out in the community,
Yeah.
not just within the walls of their church.
You should explain
Yeah.
what the fresh expression refers to.
Fresh expressions is, as my understanding of it, is ways in which we get out into the community and do things outside the walls of the church, like Loads of Love,
Right.
or Bibles for Brews,
Yep.
or
Yep.
men's breakfast or the women's breakfast, and
That's lay led,
yeah,
not pastor led.
right.
Right.
It's all
Yep.
lay led. People going out and just saying, well, you know, let's just get together and do this thing.
And the important part is that you're serving people that might not otherwise be served.
Yeah, and one of the
And
things that
That's why it's such a great connection.
one of the things that really impressed me in this small community, I don't know how it would work in Yankton, but you know, we have a prayer box, in need of prayer box we have back of the sanctuary where people can put prayer requests. They did this around in the community to different business places or places, you know, a laundromat or even a restaurant
with
or
our
a coffee
Loads of Love.
or a coffee shop. Yeah, but
Yep.
with Loads of Love has one, but then when we leave, we take it with us.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
what would it look
Yeah.
like to keep it?
What would it look like
Yeah.
to keep that
Right.
in specific
Yes.
locations around town? And I
Yep.
thought, well, I'm going to talk to the people at Pathways
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
good
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
Awesome.
if they would agree to it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I've already got people lined up to pray
Yeah.
for those prayers.
well,
so-
right. And I
Yeah.
thought, you know, at our men's breakfast, it's basically a devotional, and we share things with each other and everything. But I thought maybe we could turn that into a men's prayer group as well.
Yeah.
Not just forget the rest of it, but add it to what we're doing there.
I
Wouldn't
think,
it be impressive to have people come into the restaurant and they see all these men praying at the table?
Yep.
one of the things I love about annual conference is that, you know, we think of it as just this meeting where we're going to vote on budget and stuff, but really we come away so filled and inspired.
Yeah.
And that's what I love
Absolutely.
about going. That's what makes the drive to Bismarck worth it.
It's a long drive.
Yes, it is.
Well, the food wasn't all that bad either.
Well, that's true.
It's a
Craig,
food.
what about you? What of the TED Talks, of the other learning workshop experiences stood out to you?
Well, the other, they mentioned two of the speakers, the other ones, the gentleman that was with the United Tribes Technical College told his journey, that he'd been, in trouble, service, went through addiction and stuff, and he looked a lot younger than he must be because
Being
of all
a doctorate.
because he mentioned all these time frames
like-
and all these
Yeah.
things he went through, and he said, we need to learn and value our cultural differences and then connect with each other. And the other one was, I think it was Katie Meek. She's has to do with missions from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
general church
Yeah,
level.
she's our North Central Jurisdiction missionary.
And she was so full of energy.
Right.
Oh.
Yes, yeah, she was.
And it was her
yeah.
birthday.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and she challenged everyone to step up and get out into the world in our mission field. So those two were pretty good. Some of the breakout sessions, I went to the same ones I think Carla did. I went to the Green Team one, which was good, and then also the Fresh Expressions. They were all good.
Yeah.
Like I said, what some of these smaller churches they're all doing, because there are a couple of them that have where they kids stop by on their way to school for coffee or hot chocolate, or some of them even give them breakfast and stuff. And it's,
Right.
you know, and they're in smaller communities where, you know, they need to reach out to keep themselves viable and stuff. But, you know, it was very interesting what they're all doing, you know.
I
And
think
some of
the
them, they're doing
key
stuff that isn't
behind all of
necessarily
them
outside of their church
was
either.
listen to your community. You know, as you say that, it was listen to your community, outreach where the needs are, you know, come to people where they are, and, you know, be that hands and feet,
Yeah,
and not have to be within your walls.
right.
And not to really have an agenda. Do it just because you want to love them. And-
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hear people say, well, somebody ought to do something about that. You know, well, there you go. That
Yeah,
somebody's
that's what
somebody's
they were doing,
calling
is
you.
challenging us to
Yeah,
do
Who
that,
do you think's
yeah.
supposed to do it?
What is it that I say if you come to me with that? That sounds
Yeah.
like a great idea for you.
Yeah.
Right? The other speaker that didn't get mentioned, and I feel like I just need to give him a little airtime, is Trib Nagel, who was there with the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry,
Oh, yeah, he was funny.
who I thought he was the funniest of
Yeah,
them
he
all.
was hilarious.
But one of the things that I really appreciate about Bishop Lynette is her commitment to helping us understand our connection to the rest of the United Methodist Church. So we had another bishop there, Bishop Carla
He was
Rapinoe
very good.
from the Phoenix Episcopal area, which is all of Arizona, part of New Mexico, and one church in California, which I really need to know that story. So he was with us the whole week, the whole time, and then having Trib Nagel with our Global Board of Higher Education and Ministry, having our North Central Jurisdiction missionary. Just, I've never felt so connected or starting to really put faces to the support that we have nationally and globally. And
They
and
even talked about the connections to Alaska, where there's, you know, some of the pastors there that we know, and so it just felt like,
yeah,
you know, we're just putting our arms around it all.
Dan, how did it feel to lead one of the workshops at annual conference?
Well, lead may be a strong word. No, there, one of the pastors up at Jamestown, Pastor Marty, help me with his last.
Tepke Floyd.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't say that. He has been the mover and shaker in the conference to try to encourage churches to do green teams. And then after last year's conference, we with the help of multiple people here in the church, we did get a green team started. And so I was asked to just basically tell the people that wanted to hear what we did and the steps to start one and what you do as a green team. So fortunately, people had taken some photographs of some of the projects that we've done here in the church, and so I just created a PowerPoint that explained the kind of the genesis of the green team and what we've been doing, and some of the things that we do in church services with our little PowerPoint slides highlighting different environmental facts or things you can do to be more earth friendly and help mitigate climate change, and as well as what some of our future plans are. And it was there was also speakers there that talked about more technical aspects. There was somebody actually there from one of the utilities. The industry talked about all the things available now to help decrease our use of CO2 producing energies, including one I hadn't really heard much about, which was a heat pump water heater. So instead of having heating coils in a water heater, it's actually drawing heat energy out of the surrounding area and using that to heat the water, just like heat pumps do now for houses, for both heating and air conditioning, and that was pretty cool. So, and and then I'm blanking on the other woman's name.
Cindy Heidelberger.
Yeah, who's marrying Dwayne Coates
Yes.
in July. So that's neat. because Dwayne Coates' grandmother was my Sunday school teacher in Edgemont, so I've always had a connection with the Coates families.
Connections.
Yeah, connections,
Right, yeah.
even far flung as across the state. But she gave a really good talk about ministry that they have going in Sioux Falls that is teaching a lot of good lessons to kids and folks about everything from composting to gardening, and that was really a good message as well. So it was a well-attended workshop, I thought. I think about 60 people had signed up for it, so there seemed to be way more interest about it this year than there was last year. So that was encouraging, and hopefully other churches will do projects and get green teams started.
Yeah. As far as business of the annual conference, it was pretty mild going this year for voting. We didn't have our fancy little electronic voters this year, but it didn't really seem that we needed them. Almost everything was unanimous. I think the only thing that wasn't was around a move policy for clergy that had to change due to the tax law changing and some other bits with the moving company. But actually this will, in the end, make it much easier for families to move when the time comes. Does anyone want to speak to any of the other things that we voted on, or do you even? I joked to Carla, I'm like, we got to have some discussion on something, otherwise it's not going to feel like a real annual conference.
Really, when it comes down to it, it seemed like a lot of it was on verbiage and trying to make sure you had the wording right. And to be honest with you, I think that I don't want to say it in a bad way, but close is good enough, because you got to put it into practice and see if it works. And if it's not working, you're going to bring it back to conference and tweak it for what needs to happen. So I think that's what, that's the best way of saying everything that came across was so, well said, other than the moving policy had a little tweaking of words or whatever, that it just kind of went through, it flowed through. Everybody was like, yeah, let's try it. Let's go. Let's move forward.
I think on that topic, I think one of the things that was most controversial is paying for transportation for new ministry to go and visit the church that they got sent to.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we're going to help pay for one trip for them to come and visit their new church, see if everything was all right there. And they said, well, what if it's somebody from a seminary way out of state, and who want to pay for that? And some didn't want to do that, and then they decided that, well, it really wasn't that big a deal, and so
Yeah.
whoever
It's not
wants to
gonna be
go
very many, but
whoever wants to go and visit a church or a new clergy or a different clergy visiting a new church that they've been asked to serve in, why their transportation is going to be paid for. That was the most controversial, most discussion we had. So
Yeah,
you can
and once
tell
again,
it's not a
if
big
it
thing to
doesn't-
most of us.
if it
So-
doesn't work, it's going to be changed anyway. I
Well,
mean,
right.
it's like.
But that's
it's
the
fine.
most discussion we had
Yeah.
on any one topic, so you can
Right.
see things went pretty smoothly.
Right.
If you're going to talk about that long.
The budget did get approved. The budget is less than it has been. However, there's still a gap between what they're estimated to take in and what their estimated expenses are, and they do have reserves to fund that, but that's still a work in progress at the conference level of how to live into kind of our new budget constraints. And I do know from my vantage point that a lot of shifting is happening, and they're still doing a lot of diligent work on that. But that's a tough one.
And they have new staffing.
Yeah.
And so they're building from that as
Yeah.
well. But it sounded very confident that we had good staff in place, and that they've got some great ideas that they want to move forward on that are going to be encouraging to helping supplement the budget. And so back to, even though it was, not a perfect budget, it's a very promising budget.
Yes.
Yes.
So one of my favorite parts of annual conference is the ordination, the service of life and ministry. And this year they put it on Saturday morning, which was a little different. I had a moment where I was like, who does worship services in the morning? And then I was like, oh, that's me. I do that every week. But I just kind of want to let's end with your takeaways from that service and from our worship at annual conference.
Having seen several of these now, I'm always moved by the part of the service where after they have done the ordinations and other things, they ask, is there anybody here who has heard the call and would like to respond to the call? And there's often some very young people that obviously have been thinking about it a long time, and I'm sure have been, mentored by clergy and laity. But how many people come forward each time? And then you're a part of that. I saw you up there, and there's like they get in little small groups, like huddles, and I suppose they're praying for them or for their discernment and how genuine it is. And so what happens when you guys are in your little huddles?
So the reason I was up there this year is one of the people who came down was someone that was in my previous charge. And her pastor wasn't there, and I was looking around because normally, if someone from your church goes, you go to help pray. And so I went, and then the pastor who served that church before me also showed up because he had known her as well, and so we kind of became her support system, and praying. But we pray, and then they are given a book, and they fill out some contact information because that's really the first step in the journey. And so then the Board of Ordained Ministry and we start to follow up with them and connect with them and begin that process of discernment with them. But that's one of the ways that they kind of get started in the process, is that first declaration of, I think God's calling me to something. And so that's always an incredible moment. And I'm always amazed at what God is doing.
Well, the thing that's so moving as somebody sitting out in the pews is that you have just witnessed a major decision and a major life event for these folks that are coming forward. It's a big. You don't often see little moments in people's lives condensed to that point, and then you get to watch it.
Yeah. And really, as a witness, you're a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really like the memorial part of this service, because the longer I've been associated with the United Methodist Church, I've gotten to know some of the pastors, and Robert Semrod had passed away, and Eileen Wilson, Perry's wife, had passed away, and they were part of this church when I first began coming here.
Wow.
And,
It's nice they recognize the spouses of clergy too.
But I was going through a tough time when Sunreds were here, and boy, I tell you, those two really supported me.
Wow. Wow.
So the feeling of the conference, the conference itself had a praise team or contemporary feel. That last service was more that tradition all coming together, and you could just feel, like you said, there was so much tradition there that I don't know, it just makes it so calming. It's just, you come back to that, and that's what you leave with, is that calming feeling from all those years of tradition in that service. And it's a beautiful church too, which doesn't hurt, having that beautiful stained glass, and the choir was gorgeous, and it was just a lot of stuff instilled there. I do have to say that if we're going to finish on anything, I think we should finish on Wolbers. I know.
That story?
Isn't it great?
Yeah. Yeah. She read that story about Wilbur. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
I didn't get the chime in though.
No,
do we
I
need
was
to
with
try
you.
it?
I was
Do we
with
need
you.
to try it one more time? I know.
Isn't
Isn't
it
it great?
Well, I want to say on behalf of our church, thank you for being willing to do this work. We know that our part is getting to help elect and affirm you into this role. And we thank you for taking it seriously and for dedicating that time and energy to going to annual conference. I'm gonna turn the camera back to me for a second. Just a few things that are coming up in the life of the church. This Sunday, we are celebrating Tom and Jane Gilmore's anniversary, 60 years together. And so we'll be having fellowship after church. And so you can stick around for that. The 23rd, there's too many Sundays in June. The 23rd, we're going to be having a town hall meeting after worship, and we will have treats from the leadership team that day. And some of our annual conference delegates will be there as well. We'll talk about changes from general conference, any questions you have about annual conference that we didn't cover in this video, as well as updates about the roof, which they are currently working on as we speak, and any other things you'd like to bring to the forefront. The town halls are your time to get to ask your questions, make your voice heard in the church, because every single person matters. And then on the 30th, so the next 3 Sundays, the 30th after worship, we're doing something a little different, and we're going to be blessing our community garden out on West City Limits Road, because what a wonderful ministry we have, and I think it'd be really great for all of us to go out there and to really see where it is, to maybe get involved with it in some way, sign up to be garden watchers, but also to offer a blessing over the garden, because that produce gets used in a variety of ways, including in our Care Casseroles ministry, along with other things. And so it is truly meant to be a blessing. And so why don't we as the church offer a blessing over that garden? So that's going to be happening June 30th, following the worship service. So lots to look forward to, lots happening. I know it's summer, but we're not slowing down here at the church. Again, one more thank you to all of you for being at annual conference. Please know if you ever have questions, or if you're interested in being a delegate to annual conference, if you're a member of the church, all you need to do is fill out an application, and we'd love to have you join us as well. So until next time, God bless. Thank you for listening to this episode of What's Going On. We'd love to have you join us for worship here at the church on Sundays at 10 a.m. You can also find us online via our website at firstumcyankton.org, or search for us on YouTube.